Hey, this is Brannon Jones, author of the award-winning College Readiness 101 workbook series, here with another episode of the College Readiness 101 podcast. Now, today I'm very excited because I have somebody here that I've known for a very long time, Miss Miya Walker. I've known her from different colleges that she's worked at, and now she is at Emory University. How you doing, Miya?
I'm doing good, Brannon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I have been wanting to get you on here for a while, so now I got you.
Well, it's good to be here. I'm excited for our conversation, and I hope I am helpful.
Yep. Well, you will be, because I already know the nuggets that you have and the jewels that you'll be able to share with these students and parents. And so, speaking of the students and parents who are going to be watching this on YouTube or listening to this audio on the podcast, can you kind of introduce yourself, share a little bit about you so they know who they're listening to?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Miya Walker. As Brannon said, I am Senior Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Admission at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. A little bit about me is that this is my 10th cycle in undergraduate admission. So I have had a variety of experience, first working for my alma mater, which at the time was a women's college. I worked for them for 3 years. And then I worked for a medium-sized public university in Ohio as the Southeastern recruiter. And now I'm at Emory, which is a private four-year university, liberal arts focused, which uniquely enough, all the universities I work for, whether small, medium, large, or public or private, have been liberal arts. And we can talk about that as well if we want to. But I got into undergraduate admission because I wasn't really sure what I was going to do or kind of what profession I wanted to go into. I kind of rerouted during my senior year of college, but I really loved college. And I knew I loved college because I found my place. You know, we always see people say,
Right,
"You're my
right.
person." I found my place. And so I knew that that was something that was incredibly special. And I knew that some of my peers did not find their place. And I wanted to be a part of students finding a place where they could thrive, not just succeed. And so here we are 10 years
Right.
later.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And like I said, I've known you as a recruiter. You know, that recruiting world is so small, and
It
so
is.
I'm so glad I got you on. So today I'm very excited because we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of students they don't get a chance to hear about. They understand a little bit of it, but they don't get a chance to really kind of get a good understanding of the entire process. And so it's about selectivity, right? And so we're talking about understanding how colleges may select colleges and what level they may select colleges. And so today we're going to talk about highly selective colleges, right? And so can you just kind of give us a good understanding of selectivity as a whole? What does that look like, on your end, and what can the students experience on their end?
Yeah, well, selectivity is complex because it's a variety of variables that go into what makes a university a certain level of selectivity. You have everywhere from not as selective to very selective, right? And then you have like likely to be selective, somewhat selective, not as selective, and then you have some institutions that really do have the capacity to take as many students as they can admit. Um, I would say that there's a couple of variables that are public facing, right? That's, how many students the university can admit, how many students they can enroll, which is a completely different number, right? Because
Mhm.
it comes down to our wonderful student life community and housing, but how many beds do we have? How much capacity do we have on our campus? And then, of course, it is connected to population. So at Emory, we have over 8,000 students. And we usually bring in an introductory class of about 1,400, sometimes anywhere from that to 16, just depending on the capacity we can have. So that sometimes affects selectivity, right? But I think the most common understanding of it is that you get X amount of applicants, and then X amount of students are admitted, and then X amount of students enroll. And depending on that variance, right, that is how selectivity is chosen. So if you have a university that gets 20,000 applications thousands and they admit 5,000 to make a class of 1,300, that still is considered selective. Even if it, but you could have a campus that has 30,000 applicants, and they can admit 10,000 students to make up a class of 5,000, right? So, and that's not as selective. So the numbers are where selectivity really come from. It's about capacity. How many people apply? How many people do we have the space to admit? And how many people do we have the space to enroll? And a lot of that, the admittance and enrollment have to go together, because we don't want to bring anyone to campus that can't have a dorm room or can't have a place to call their
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's a good understanding. So, all right. So it's based on the numbers. It's based on capacity. Have you noticed at all about like merit? Does that play a role at all? Because sometimes people think about highly selective colleges and they think about it being a difficult college, right? It being a college that you have to really really buckle down to get into, and then really buckle down to stay in. So what anything about that is there a correlation, or is it just kind of the numbers?
Yeah, well, part two of that, and I think that's what you're mentioning, is the merit, is academics, right? And so a lot of what a selectivity has been shared, or what has been shared about selectivity, is, oh, well, if I don't meet this threshold, then I'm not admissible to a selective university. Well, once we get through the numbers part of, we've got X amount of applicants, we can admit this many, we can enroll this many to make sure that we're at as much capacity as possible. Then we have to go down to, okay, what is the value of the student? And that's not just about GPA and test scores. That is about the holistic part of the application, right? And so when we offer these admits, we have to make sure that these are students that are going to do well at our institution. So yes, to somewhat, that selectivity does have something to do with academic merit, right? Like, these are institutions, if they're very selective, that normally have students that have high testing, high GPAs. It doesn't mean that everybody in the class has that, right? Because we're talking about a middle 50%. So there is an assumption that there were some students who were over or under that middle 50%. But it does mean that there was a kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? There was a culture of most of the students that were admitted in the class fell into these margins, and they were academically prepared for that institution. But I think that what I want students and families and advocates to understand about being in a selective space is that students can be admitted and attend selective universities that may not have been selective at their own high schools. Selectivity is truly about the culture of the university and how they run, whether they are academically competitive. There's a subjective kind of conversation around rankings as well, very light conversation, but academic preparation, student culture, all of that stuff falls into what selectivity is. And so a student can come to a selective university not coming from what could be equally deemed as a selective high school, or they cannot be what would be equally deemed a selective student. So I'm hoping that kind of makes sense what I'm saying. If I need to break that down even further, let me know.
No, I think that's good. I think that's great. Is that it's up to the college, right? And that's what I'm gathering from you. It's up to the college, and the thing is that just because it may be a highly selective or very selective college doesn't always mean that you have to be, the top 2 of your class to get into it, right? And so I think that those are the big points that the students and parents would get out of that. So no, thank you for breaking that down for us. Thank you for that. So tell us a little bit. So some tips here. So I think you were telling me before that students think that they're going to come on campus and just make a big difference. They're going to come on campus and they are now the brand of the campus, right? Because of their background or their merits or whatever it is. How does that bear out with you and the students?
So I like to say this thing of when you go to college, you're not really there to brand the college. The college is kind of there to brand you. And I don't want that to sound negative either. I want to make sure that I completely divulge what I mean by that. I think that a university experience is meant to impact your life. It's
Right.
not meant to define your life. It can change your life, it can influence your life, it can alter your life for sure. But it is not meant to define your life and your future. And that's what branding is. Branding is building an identity. And the university has already done that. I mean, we've got universities that have been around longer than some states in the United States of America. I mean,
Right.
and
Right.
so it's hard to come in and just think that within 4 years' time or 5, depending on the program you're choosing, that you're going to be able to completely alter the culture. It takes a collective generation of time to do that on a university campus. But what you are going to be able to do is impact the campus. You are going to bring things to the campus that maybe they didn't have before, or maybe students before you were pushing and you were just there at the right time with the right intellect and the right capacity and resource to
Right.
get those things done. And I think that is what I want students to remember about this process, right? Like, you are going to a university in hopes that this will influence you, it will alter your life, it will impact your life to create a future for you that you've desired, or one that you haven't even dreamed of yet, but it's on the way for you to have. And so in order for that to happen, you've got to realize that, you may not move Mount Kilimanjaro, but you might move one part of the Rockies, and that's okay, right?
Right.
And it's not meant for you to come and completely shift that culture. It's for a collection of students to come and maneuver and shift the culture. And I don't want to dismiss the fact that we do have valiant students. There's always a couple that are going to stand out and really be an impactful major voice on campus. And we desire those students at Emory, and I think probably everywhere, right? That's the beauty of college. But I think sometimes students get so invested in, like, well, I have to be here, right? And I have to have this experience. And also, I need A, B, C, D, E, F, and G to feel like this is the right fit. Well, what if you get A through E? Is
Right.
that okay, right?
Right.
And maybe you create the letters after that once you get there, because it'll be hard for all of us to bring every single thing that each individual student wants. But we can bring a few things, several things, maybe 7 things that are really great for everyone. And then within that, you pick and choose and create what is going to be right for you and your individual experience.
Right, right. And that's the one thing I always talk about with students and parents is understanding with my workbook series. And when I do presentations, I always talk about, making sure that you can select the college based on the experience that you would like to have. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about now, right? Is like the
Mhm.
college can give you these 7 things that everybody can take advantage of, and it's positive for everybody, but you actually have to sit down and see how that impacts you, what
Right.
you want to see at that campus, and what you want to get out of it. So that's perfect. All right, all right. So you said you can't come and brand this college or this university, this institution. It's already branded. I like that. I like that. It's just kind of tempers the expectations for those who come onto the campus. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. So I got one last question for you, and it's kind of interesting on how we talk about this. And I think I know what you're going to say, but when selecting a college and kids have their hopes on one particular college because that's the college they wanted to go to for whatever reason, what can you say about that student? What advice would you give to that student who is make or break? Is this school or bust? What do you say to those?
Well, I think it's important and fair to always have at least one reach school on your college list, no matter who you are.
Right.
Because I think that, like we've been discussing, you just never know what's going to happen in the process. You don't know the selectivity, you don't know the institutional needs. And so you just really don't know. And so having a reach school, what we call reach, it's totally fair, and you should. I think that society has created a challenge for students in creating a college list, because we have this college romanticization going on, where
Okay.
it's like, this is the only place I can go. This is the only place that's going to give me the experience that I want. If I don't go here, I don't want to go to college, kind of feeling. And I think that's heightened a little more than it was 10, 20 years ago. And I will say that that is a place that you don't want to completely be at. I think it's okay for sure to have a place that you love and say, man, like I really want to go here. But I think it's also okay to have a B, C, and D that you're like, I really also like these, and I really
Right.
would be okay if I end up here as well. And I want to say, I mean, this is anecdotal data and based on just the conversations I've had with many recruiters and just friends and peers and families, but in the own data, and I have no actual statistics, but in conversations that I've had over the past 15 years, the people who usually went with their A, they liked it, but they always wondered what would happen at B or C. And I
Mm.
am an example of a student who went to my C college and loved it. And so, and my A and B were drastically different. One was a very large state university, and the other one was a medium-sized private university in a really beautiful historic town. And they were totally different. And then I chose a women's college. So, I mean,
Right.
none of them were the same. But I was open and I was willing, and I had not overly romanticized one. I knew where I was like, yes, I will go if I get in here. But I also had an intrigue with the other ones. And it's just so happened that when I visited my alma mater, I was like, where am I going to? These are all the things that I care about. And this is what I've said I wanted.
Right.
And so I need to prioritize this now. And so it quickly moved to the top. And so I think just being honest with yourself about what do you need in this process? What is going to allow you to go to a university and say, this is my home. I belong here. That is what should be at the top of the list. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love football. I'm all about game day. I'm all about the culture and all that stuff, but I gave up that and the opportunity to pledge a sorority, all of that, because what was top of my list, my alma mater had, and those things it didn't. And I was willing to sacrifice those things to have the experience that I really wanted. And so that's what my charge to students is that don't get so in love with the school that you dismiss the opportunity to really find your place, because that's the whole point of all of this. And you want to be at your place because that is where the magic actually is going to happen.
Right. It's so funny that you said that about romanticizing stuff, because I can absolutely in my head think of like two or three reasons or two or three examples of things that I've done in my past outside of education where I romanticized something and it ended up being something else that I needed to want. I give you examples. I talk about this in my work, but I said I never wanted a white car. Right? I said I never wanted a white car because I always thought they got too dirty. I always thought I was like, you never want to get a white car. But when I went to go look at cars, and this was when I was first graduated from college, and I had my first job, and I was going to buy my first car by myself. I went in and I said, all right, well, there's this Mustang. I see it. It it has the mileage that I wanted, right? It was under the certain mileage that I wanted. It was at my price point. It was only one owner. It had all of the things that I wanted. The only thing was it was white, right? And so what I realized is that what you think is something that you do or don't, or is not a must-have or a deal breaker, might not be when you really do the research. And so I ended up buying that car, right? Same thing when me and my wife was going to go think about getting married, and we was looking at venues. The number one place I wanted to go was 200 Peachtree, downtown Atlanta. And I looked at it and we went, and I fell in love. We fell in love with it, but it was like all these thousands of dollars before we even got to the food and the invitations and all these other things. And so we didn't end up getting married there. But the point being is that you think that you have this certain thing, you fall in love with, you romanticize it, and you get your feelings hurt.
Right.
When it doesn't work out that way. And I think that that's something that we can prevent families from having to experience, right?
And I want to also add, just tying that in with the branding, right? When you don't romanticize and you really allow yourself to say, okay, I really like this place, I really like this place, but I also could do this place. You create balance for yourself in this process, because as you were saying, right, like if I'm not admitted, I'm sad, but I'm not crushed, right? Because I still know I have other options. But then with the branding, right, you have to remember that like that plays a part in how all of this manifests. So, if you romanticize something, And then let's say you do get admitted and you get there, but then the brand of that university is not, it doesn't align with you. It's not who you are. You're not growing the way you want to, right? And you feel like, okay, this isn't my place. Then you've kind of made it harder for yourself, because now
Right.
you want to have to go through that process again, or you may choose to stay there and try and make the best of it, which that's encouraged as well. Sometimes we don't find our footing in the beginning. It takes us a little while, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and I try and share with students, if we're honest about it in the beginning, it saves us a lot of grief and time during and in the end.
Right.
Because then we get to say, I really went into this even kill in the beginning so that I could have an experience that I could be proud of in the end. And that is a personal responsibility. And I don't want to take the beauty out of this process, because college is so much fun. And I think we all agree on that. Like,
Right.
it's a
Right.
really great experience. But it's great when you find where you're supposed to be. That's what
Right.
makes it even more great.
Yep. You have to make a business decision, right? At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
you have to make a business decision for yourself and your family. And I think that that's kind of what we're getting at. So no, thank you for these nuggets, Maya. This was amazing. I enjoyed this conversation.
I did too. It's wonderful to always be able to have a transparent conversation and really share the ins and outs of the work we do.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So let's go ahead and close this one out. What I want to do, I'm actually going to have another conversation with you. I knew I was going to enjoy it, and I'm gonna pick your brain some more. So we're gonna record another episode. But I'm very excited. So if you like what you hear and you want to learn more, you can visit my website at collegereadiness101.com and my Instagram, Facebook at collegereadiness101.com. You can YouTube this on at College Readiness 101 on YouTube, and you can follow this podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Oh, but before we do that, before I close it out, I forgot, Maya. For those individuals who are interested in Emory, I know you're working at Emory. I forgot that how can they get more information, or how can they get to learn more about Emory University?
Yeah, so we are on a couple of different platforms too. I'll start with the website, apply.emory.edu. That's where you'll find all the information about our application process, whether you're a first year student, an international student, or a transfer student. You'll also find our information about in-person and virtual sessions and tours. We push out a lot of virtual content as well on our YouTube page, which is Emory Admission. And then Emory, as the university, has several different YouTube channels that you can just find out more. And then you can also follow us on Instagram at Emory Admission. I also host a monthly show called Miya Explains It All, where I walk through our process and also just kind of give you specific advice on and my thoughts and opinions on Emory and deadlines and all of that good admission stuff. So definitely feel free to follow.
All right, all right. I'm sorry, I almost cut off you. Couldn't you get more
No,
information?
it's
So
okay. It's
I
okay.
apologize about that. I apologize about that. So
It's all good.
we'll close this one out. Thank you so much for your time, Maya. I want you to stick around. We'll do another episode. But I just wanted to make sure that these students and families got a chance to have a better understanding from somebody who is doing this work, right?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.